Super Tatsumaki. Why couldn't any of the other controllers be like this? Now, if only this D-pad had made it to the Nintendo Switch Lite, it would have been like the perfect handheld console. Hello and welcome to another NihongoGamer video. As you know, I like to play games on my Nintendo Switch, I like to play them on my PlayStation, I like to play them on all sorts of platforms, but the thing that bothers me is the D-pad on my Nintendo Switch. This is the Hori D-Pad Joycon. It only works when plugged into the Switch. When you're plugged into the dock, you've got to use a separate controller. This is one also made by Hori. It's got a D-pad, but I'm not too big a fan of it. And here's the one by 8-Bit Do. This also has a few of its own issues. So, since the best options that seem to be available to me here in Japan are for the PlayStation 4, I've gone and bought one of these. Now, if you play fighting games, you're probably already very familiar with things like this. This is by a company called Brook. They make converters, and this goes from a PS4 or PS3 controller to a Nintendo Switch controller. Now, this adapter does work with a large number of controllers, so I'm not going to try them all today, but I did go shopping, and today we're going to be testing out this. It is the Hori Fighting Commander controller, and it's kind of interesting because this one may well have a nice D-pad on it. I'm hoping because it says Fighting Commander. It's got 6 face buttons, where normally you would have R1 and R2 on the shoulder buttons on the controller. This one actually has R1 and R2 on the front of the controller, so it's actually laid out 6 buttons in a couple lines, just like you might find on a traditional arcade stick. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this layout, because I guess to use all these 6 buttons most effectively, you would have to hold your hand on the controller like this rather than using your thumb. It looks like they explain it quite clearly on the box here. You can have the shoulder buttons be the traditional L1, L2, R1, R2 on the shoulder buttons, or you can change the mode switch here so that it's R3, L3, and L1, L2 on the shoulder buttons instead. So let's go ahead and open it out of the box. Pull this out. Whoa, it's full falling out. Chuck the box over there. Yikes. And we have the controller itself. Here's a look at the controller. We've got the 6 buttons here on the front, and we've got the D-pad here on the left side. Also in the middle, you've got a turbo button, share button, and the standard options button. You've got your PS button to go to the home menu, and interestingly enough, you can actually change the D-pad to be digital stick, left analog stick, or right analog stick. Now, I doubt that this D-pad is analog, but it will at least give you some digital control of maybe like camera movement, because sometimes when you're like decorating your character and you want to rotate behind them to see what costume they're wearing, you have to use the analog sticks. And then this is the top of the stick. You've got your L1, R1, L2, R2 shoulder buttons there, and you also have this switch that lets you change between the different modes. This one is L1, L2, R1, R2, and the other one is R3, L3, L1, L2. I'm just gonna feel the buttons. I mean, these don't feel like they have a lot of travel on the shoulder buttons. The main buttons, they feel like they have a good amount of travel. And you can slide your thumb across them in case you need to do special techniques that require sliding all 3 buttons, like so. I guess also if you're activating V-trigger and things like Street Fighter V, you can just put your fingers down like this. You can activate your throws, activate your V-skills, activate your V-triggers using a single finger like this. D-pad feels okay. It doesn't feel super clicky, but it does feel nice and tight. You may remember when I did a D-Pad Joycon video on this for the Nintendo Switch. I felt it was a little bit spongy, and it actually gets even spongier over time. This feels a little bit more rigid. We don't know how it feels until we plug it in, and one thing that I really want to know is, can I both do Hadouken moves, like if you're Ryu, doing fireballs and dragon punches, and then if you switch over to characters like Zangief, can you also do 360 motions easily? I want a controller that can do both, because unfortunately, controllers like this and controllers like this, they were good for like one kind of character, but not great for other kinds of characters. And ideally, I just want a controller that's a lot like the DualShock 4. Because I feel like this controller does most things really, really well. It's quite expensive, but it's nice. All I have to do is plug it into this adapter, like so, and we're gonna plug it into the dock, and let's play it on the screen. All right, I've got this Hori Fighting Commander ready to go, and here's the adapter. We're going to plug it into the Switch now, and we're gonna see whether this actually functions or not, because I haven't actually tested it yet. All right, it's plugged into the Switch now, and we do have control. Okay, this is a good start. This is a very good start. We'll go to offline play, and let's try training mode for Street Fighter Alpha 3. All right, first thing I want to do is throw a fireball. All right. Oh my goodness. It feels so weird to have a controller that works. Oh my goodness. Every single time, no problem. Okay, that's no problem. Fireball, Dragon Punch. Oh my god. Finally a controller that works. Tatsumaki. Got our Tornado Kicks. They seem to be working. Dragon Punches are fine. How about 3? How about Super? Super is fine. Super Tatsumaki. Why couldn't any of the other controllers be like this? This D-pad works brilliantly. Oh man. Yeah, it's all looking very good. Alright, so we've tried Ryu. Let's change character to Zangief. Wow, we can rush through this test because it just works. Zangief. Not sure if Street Fighter Alpha 3 if you needed 6 inputs or 7 inputs for the spinning pile driver to come out. Let's try it with 6 inputs first. No? Right. So you've got to end in the up position. Some people mentioned in a previous video when I was testing the Nintendo Switch Lite, which had a D-pad, which I didn't really like because it just would not press diagonal for me. It could press all the cardinal directions, but it wouldn't press diagonal. And they were suggesting that maybe the reason it was working fine with Zangief is because you actually don't need the diagonals. Maybe as long as it registers the forward, down, back, up, and all 4 of those commands, maybe it just works. But for this one, I can actually see that my diagonals are coming out. Beautiful. Alright, so my pile driver does seem to be coming out no problem, but let's just double check. Are the actual diagonals coming out? Forward, down, back, back, up, up. Beautiful. All of the commands are properly coming out. I can't believe it. Why is it so difficult for everyone to make a controller for the Switch when we've already got one right here? All they need to do, Hori, please, Hori, I'm asking you, just make this controller, the Hori Fighting Commander, just make a Switch version, please. It would be nice to be able to use this controller on the Switch without I think the adapter costs like $60, I can't remember how much I paid, and not every shop actually has it. Just, it works beautifully, oh man. How about 720? Beauty. Oh, beautiful! Oh my, I'm so happy. Now, if only this D-pad had made it to the Nintendo Switch Lite, it would have been like the perfect handheld console. The other thing I'm not sure about is why do I have it laid out like this? I've never played with my hands like this, but I'm just wondering if instead of using my thumb like so, is there any benefit to having my fingers up like this? I suppose some EX moves, like in Street Fighter 5, like square and R1, that would be a different EX move compared to triangle and R1. That could be a different EX move. I'm sure there's a lot of really cool techniques involving remapping of the buttons so that you can use a combination of shoulder buttons and having hand over technique like this. I'm very excited to explore the world of pad, now that I've got a pad that doesn't suck. Now, I'm no expert at Street Fighter 3rd Strike, but at least we can test the EX moves. Just try pressing all 3 at the same time. Okay, to play with my hand over like this, I'd probably have to rest it on my hand, on my leg, I mean, because as you can see, when you're using 3 hands like so, you no longer have anything like underneath the pad apart from your thumb, and it's not very stable. You'd probably be more stable as long as you rest the pad like on your leg. I could get used to that. Oh, right, brilliant. The ability to press diagonal motions. How can you mess that up? And Hori's just like, you know what? Fighting gamers, we gotcha. So let's go into training mode. Basically yesterday or the day before, I just changed teams, so I'm not really familiar with how to use these characters, but I'm kind of excited about changing teams. Actually, one of the main reasons I changed teams was that I was autopiloting. Every time I get into a certain character and I'm like not able to actually get better, it's because I'm autopiloting. I've learned one combo and I'll just do that combo over and over and over again. So it's actually quite good for me to like change characters every now and then. Right here, you should be able to see. Let's say I want simple aerial dash to be R3 or L3. You can see it does work. Even using the Brook Adapter, it does register your L3 and R3 buttons as your clicking in of the analog controllers here, but I'm actually not going to use them at all. I'm just going to stick with L here. Now, one of the main things I want to try in a game like BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle or any anime fighter really is whether you can do your instant air dashes, and it seems that it works just fine. In fact, it does remind me a lot of this, the Hori D-Pad Joycon, this blue one that we have plugged into the Switch. So it's actually quite nice to be able to move from something that you're already very familiar with on the Switch when you're plugged into handheld mode. to be able to switch over to this controller and have something very similar. But I would say maybe it's just because it's new, but it feels a little tighter. The thing is, I don't know if maybe it's just because I've had this controller for a long time, but it feels a little bit tighter. Honestly, it's hardly noticeable. It's very, very similar to the Hori D-Pad Joycon. Now, even though I do have this 6-button layout here on the front of the pad, I think I still want my partner skill to be on top here. And the reason is, when you're in a game like BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, you'll be doing a combo like this, where you've got both characters on screen at the same time. But when you're doing something that's called a cross combo, you actually need to hold down this buttons so that you can keep your partner still so that they don't interfere. And then when you let go of it, they do other things. You don't want that to be on the face, because then how would your thumb, basically I would have to put my hand over like this. But if you're playing with your thumb, then you probably want to stick with using the shoulder button for those things. But fortunately, it's not like it's set in stone. You can actually change any of your controls here. You could actually play the game with no normal buttons at all. Imagine if you're playing with the controller like this and you've got your hand over like this, then you could put maybe your partner skill on R2, and then you could press, then you've got two fingers to press buttons with here, and then you can hold down. Let's try it, why not? You're going to button settings, and let's say partner skill, let's set that to R2. Interesting. So actually, this could be quite cool. I really I'm not an expert at this, but I am feeling that I need to have it resting on my leg here. Otherwise, do people play this like hovering in the air? If you're a pad player and you've got a stick like this, which has 6 face buttons, do let me know if you play it up in the air with your like thumb holding it in place, or do you rest it on your leg? I think probably I would have to rest it on my leg like so. So I can see people getting used to it. I can see people taking advantage of having 3 digits to play with the pad over here, rather than only having your thumb do all the work. Or you can also set your shoulder buttons, pressing A, B, C quickly in succession. Does that look like this? It does! Oh, you have to be careful how you do it. Otherwise, sometimes you just get 2 buttons at the same time. Even using this, the 8-bit Do controller, I think it would have been a little bit tricky because these buttons aren't quite flat enough or the right shape. But these buttons are all exactly the same size and exactly the same shape. So you can do stuff like this. But it's not just fighting games. The other things that I want to try are things like Mega Man X. How does this controller feel for playing Mega Man X? Okay, we've got no issues. Charging. Aha, this is great. Oh, much nicer. So just using the default controls for Mega Man, being able to charge up this X-Buster while jumping on the wall is really important. And later on in X games, you'll be doing dash jumping. Test our dash. Okay, dash is fine. Charging up while jumping, dash jumping and charging, no problem. See, if you've seen any of the previous videos where I was trying out other controllers, you'll know that this is so wonderful. I guess if there's one thing I'm having a little trouble getting used to, it's the size of these buttons. Sometimes I want to like dash jump, not pressing them at the same time. I want to dash and then jump. So for example, while I'm charging like this, I want to press the circle button and then the cross button. And that is possible, but you have to get used to it because the buttons are a little flatter, a little bit bigger than what I'm used to. I'll have to get used to it, but pressing dash before you press jump does take a little bit of getting used to. But dash jumping off the walls, that's nice and easy. Because if you don't dash jump, obviously you don't get much distance off the wall. But often when you're fighting these bosses, you'll want to like jump, dash jump off the wall like this. Like that. Gotta use the sword to save X, of course. No other way to do that. So let's go into Mario Maker, if I can find the cartridge. Where's the cartridge? Oh yeah, it's in that little holder. Let's just find no, not now. Let's just find a random course. All right, Joshua, let's see what you got. Okay, so I've got my normal jump. I can run and jump. Where's my spinny jump? What button is that? It's set to R1. What? I don't want it to R. Why is it set to R1? I never even noticed. So recently I've been playing the Super Famicom version of Super Mario World, the retro console, where normally it's actually where triangle is to do the spin jump. But It's LR in this game. Shows how little I've been playing this game. Maybe it's better that way. Then your fingers don't have to do double duty. Oops. Well, it seems to work. Doesn't seem like there are any issues with the Hori Fighting Commander for Super Mario Maker 2. Honestly, I'm more than overjoyed right now. Well, there you have it. That is the Hori Fighting Commander. I can't remember how much I paid for this. It was something like $30. It was really cheap, if I remember. It was either 30 or 40. Maybe it was $40, but basically, it's quite inexpensive for a controller. I suppose maybe that's because it doesn't have analog sticks. But if you're playing this for fighting games or something like Mario Maker or Mega Man X, those games want really nice digital control. And I think if you're a fan of this, the Hori D-Pad Joycon, and you just wish that there were a way that you could just use this D-pad on the game when it's it's in docked mode. Unfortunately, you can't plug this in because this is only for handheld mode. This is definitely the best option in my opinion. The Hori Fighting Commander. Plus, it has all of these buttons and options like being able to switch these shoulder buttons. Plus, on top of that, you can switch between digital pad, left stick, right stick if you want to emulate the analog stick just for, whatever options or changing costumes in various games. And it has all 6 buttons that you would normally need in a fighting game right here on the front of the controller. Plus, this is a feature I don't even think I even mentioned. It's got a PlayStation 4. If you need to plug it into a PlayStation 3, you can switch the mode here. And I think if you've got a PC game that uses X input, you can also switch it to PC mode there. There's a little convenient switch at the bottom. It's got a share button and it's got an options button and it's got a home button, but it doesn't have a touchpad. So when you're plugged into something like this, we're plugged into the Nintendo Switch right now, we're having no issues. But if you've got a game that is hardwired to only use the touchpad to reset the game and stuff, like especially in training mode in fighting games, I don't see any kind of touchpad emulation on this stick. The only thing we've got is the share button, and that is not the same as the touchpad. On a PlayStation 4 game, you would just have to deal with the fact that this controller does not have a touchpad, but really the touchpad's only very useful in like training mode. But it so happens that the Nintendo Switch doesn't have a touchpad either, so when I was in games like BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, I was able to switch really easily using the share button here on games in like training mode in BlazBlue. All in all, I'm really happy with it. I think it's a reasonably priced controller, especially if you just want to play fighting games. You don't need the analog stick anyway. I do know that there are apparently some clever techniques where you can use a D-pad and an analog stick at the same time for some clever stuff, but if you don't need to do stuff like that, I think it's a reasonably priced controller, but more importantly, it's nice, cheap and cheerful controller that you can plug into your Nintendo Switch. The only thing is, of course, that if you want to plug it into the Nintendo Switch, you do need to get the Brook Adapter. Unfortunately, that costs something like $60 or $70, I can't remember. Plus, it's not actually available in all shops. You gotta find a mail order place that has it in stock. I think in Japan, certain branches of Yodobashi Camera do have this in stock, but yeah, if you don't have this adapter, you can't use this controller. So I'm begging you, Hori, please just make this controller for the Nintendo Switch. Hori has made controllers for the Switch, but as far as I'm aware, it's only stuff like this, the Hori pad, and unfortunately they thought it would be really cool if you could switch between 4 buttons and having the little insert here click in, but the problem is that it makes it very, very loose. And so when I actually want to press up, sometimes I get diagonal, and when I press diagonal, sometimes I get only up. Or, when I'm just in the middle of a match and I'm just going left, right, left, right, left, right, because you want to advance forward on your enemy, but you also want to block, so you're like forward, block, forward, block, forward, block. And unfortunately, can you see, when I'm pressing left, there's a lot of wiggle. Like, it's left up, or is it left down, or is it just left? Unfortunately, this is not the controller that makes it feel very clear that you're only pressing left and right. But fortunately, on this pad, because the D-pad is quite a bit smaller, it's like left, right, left, right, left, right. You can be very certain when you're playing that you're only going left, only going right, and you're not getting these accidental back jumps. You really don't want stuff like that, especially when you're playing fighting games. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, share links, and all that great stuff. And if you have tips on how to play fighting games effectively with a pad, especially a pad that has 6 face buttons like this, the Hori Fighting Commander, do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about them, or you can come on the Discord and chat We've got a room called Gear Chat. We talk about all sorts of gear like arcade sticks, controllers. There's a bunch of new controllers, especially for people who play pad. Stuff that's coming out later this year, stuff that's coming out next year. It's all very exciting times. I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video.